Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Kate Boyd. I'm a pianist and a professor of piano, and I created this channel to help pianists like you take your playing to the next level. In this video, I'm going to talk about wrist circles at the piano. I'm going to show you what wrist circles are and how to do them, and help you understand how to incorporate them into your playing and how they can be helpful to you. I'm also going to show you specific examples from the literature, and then I'm going to finish with some closing thoughts and tips about how to do wrist circles. I made a free downloadable piano technique practice companion where I go over my foundational principles of piano technique. It's free. You can get it in the description below this video, and it has all the information about piano technique that I teach to my students, and it goes along with the playlist I originally made on foundations of piano technique. We have a lot to cover in this video, so let's get started. If you want to understand wrist circles, try this exercise. In the air, put your arms in front of you and do this back and forth. All right, we're going down, 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 down. Now do this with your hands. Do you feel how much easier that is? Wrist circles are easier because it uses the momentum of the circle to help you play into the keys, lift your weight out of the keys, and move from one part of the keyboard to another. Wrist circles are a really important part of piano technique because it helps make it much easier to play, and it helps you be able to play more efficiently. And what that does technically is it allows the wrist to move the fingers into the correct position to play, and it helps you play faster because you're grouping notes together as you play. It also helps make the music sound more musical and expressive because the notes are being shaped by the hand and fingers and arm, and therefore not all the notes are played equally, which leads to it sounding more musical. A wrist circle is a physical gesture that you make at the piano, and it literally is tracing a circle in the air with your wrist. You can go clockwise, you can go counterclockwise, and notice that it does not involve the elbow. I'm not tracing a circle with my whole arm. I'm only using my wrist going either direction. Although you can do wrist circles going either direction, counterclockwise or clockwise, I have found that usually it works best in both hands to go counterclockwise. What that means is when the notes go to the right or get higher on the keyboard, then you're going to go down and under. It'll be the lower part of the circle. So I'm going to trace the bottom part of a circle in the air as I play. Going down and then around and under. Going down and under. And then down and under. When I'm coming down, then I'm going to go up and over. I'm going to trace the upper half of the circle. Up and over, up and over, up and over, and up and over. In the left hand, it's the same thing. Down and under, down and under, down and under, and then down and under. Coming down, it's up and over, up and over, up and over, up and over. So when I do hands together, down and under, down and under, down and under. Now obviously that's a very exaggerated motion, but there's really no harm in practicing your 4-note or even 3-note arpeggios. You can broken chords like this. I'm practicing my wrist circles this way. And I want to point out to you, when I do this, I am not directing with my elbow. I'm simply using my wrist to make these circles in the air. I'm not lifting out with my elbow, and my fingers are not tight. My fingers are loose with firm fingertips as I play. Now I'm going to do a 4-note chord a little bit faster using wrist circles. And coming down, using the left hand, coming down, hands together. When you're learning music at the piano, it can be really helpful, and I would even argue essential, to choreograph your physical motions to match the musical shapes that are in the music. And wrist circles are a very effective motion that you can choreograph into your music as you learn it. You're not going to use wrist circles just anywhere in the music. You are going to look for specific types of passages or shapes that you can then use wrist circles to play. In general, I don't use wrist circles for notes or passages where the music goes back and forth. That would be an opportunity to use rotation. So an example of that is an Alberti bass pattern that goes back and forth this way. I would use rotation for that and not wrist circles. So where do you use wrist circles? Well, one example of using wrist circles is anytime in the score when you see broken 4-note or 3-note chords that are staggered and going up or down. Anything like this, you're going to probably use wrist circles. Another great opportunity to use a wrist circle is when you've got a big jump, you're spanning a big leap like that, and then you're going to go down and under as you go between the different parts of it. Another example of when you would use a wrist circle is when you have a melody that's going up and then it changes direction. At the top, you'll go down and under with the wrist and then come up and over as you turn around. You can use wrist circles when you have long melodic passages where you're trying to group notes musically and physically. And you can also use wrist circles for left-hand accompaniments. For example, if it's going like, I'll show you up here, and it's going down and around and up and over. Generally speaking, I don't use wrist circles to just play a normal scale, and as I said, I don't use wrist circles for passages that have Alberti bass in them. Now let's look at a few places where you would use wrist circles. The first example I'm going to show you is from Chopin B minor Prelude. We have this ascending arpeggiated line. So what I do is I start with my wrist slightly elevated, and then I drop, and then I go down and under the lower half of the circle because I'm ascending, and then I come up and over to play the C sharp. So again, I'm not using wrist circles in the right hand because there's no motion between these chords. I'm just dropping with my forearm into the keys. But the left hand, I'm using wrist circles on all these arpeggios. And so then again, this one, I'm grouping the notes with my arm. Listen to how it sounds if I don't use a wrist circle. It sounds like this. I'm just going to use individual fingers. Do you hear how it sounds all individual? This is now using the wrist circle. So you can hear them being more grouped. Okay, and then this one. And then this, even this large one, I'm kind of using a big arm circle going up to the top. You can find another example of a place where you use wrist circles in Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, Opus 13, and this is measure 179 in the first movement. I have these descending 4-note groups. As it goes down, you go up and over that top half of the circle with your wrist. Again, up and over. So if I do not use wrist circles in a passage like this, it would sound more like this. And there's much more pressure on each finger, and you can hear that each note sounds pretty much the same as all the other notes in terms of dynamics. This helps me organize the notes musically and technically. You can also use wrist circles to help shape melodies. Here's an example from Schumann's Arabesque. We have in the right hand this melody. We play the G, then we go down and under to the B, and then come up and over to play the G, and then we go down and under to play from the G to the C, and then we go up and over to the G. So we're making little circles for each little shape. Even this, down and under, just a really small motion from the C to the C sharp. And then I come up and over and I tap my thumb, down and under, down and under, down and under. Okay, I'll do it in context. Even in the left hand, I'm doing little wrist circles, especially when the intervals get large. Down and under, down and under, down and under. This is what it sounds like if I play this piece without using wrist circles. I'm really not trying to play this like in an ugly way, but what happens when I don't use wrist circles is I'm totally relying on my fingers and the sheer force of them to make the notes go down. Do you see how I have no motion in my wrists? Also, it's tiring. My thumbs are getting tight and my fingers are getting tired, so I want to I can go much faster and lighter with this, etc. You can use wrist circles all throughout the literature when you are shaping melodies. I'm going to show you a specific spot in Chopin's Nocturne, Opus 55, number 1. And this is in measure 17 when the music goes. All right, so I'm going from the A flat to the B flat. I would do a tiny little wrist circle even just to span those two notes because I want to link them together musically and physically. Then I'm gonna do a tiny little wrist circle going from the B flat to the D, up and over, and then from the D to the F, I'm doing a little down and under wrist circle. And then come up and over, and then down and under. So this is a series of wrist circles. I'll show you now in context. Down and under, up and over. And then same thing here, down and under, up and over. So in context. Did I play the right note there? And then up and over. Up and over and over. Without doing that, it sounds like this. I like it better, more shaped. And up and over. I hope you can see that when I'm going up that fourth, I'm using my wrist. Notice my elbow is floating, but it's not leading. Even for this main melody, I'm going down and under to make a wrist circle there. Down and under. And even with these triplets, up and over, down and under, up and over, down and under. So that I'm not only doing super standard repertoire, I want to show you an example using the Louise Farrenc Nocturne, which is Opus 49. It's a very beautiful piece, a beautiful nocturne. I'm looking at measure 47, and we have similar kind of back and forth melodic line. As it goes up, we're going down and under. When it comes down, we're going up and over with the wrist. So down and under for this. Okay, this is the figure, down and under, slight little up and over from the D to the C, then down and under, up and over. So it goes. And then same thing here, down and under. So. Down and under here, up and over as I descend. You can also use wrist circles in left-hand accompaniments. Here's an example from the Louise Farrenc Nocturne, Opus 49. The left hand drops into the bass, and then it has chords above it. So you want to make sure you don't just go down, 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 down. The wrist circle helps you drop, and then you're going down and under as you play these notes. And it helps them not to be too loud. So you're here, I'm going up and over in the right hand. You can use wrist circles anytime you've got those big left hand jumps where you have a bass note and then chords in the upper part of the accompaniment. Another way of thinking of that actually is arm circles, because you are jumping so far, but thinking in terms of the wrist making that motion helps keep the motion from becoming too large, because you don't want to be doing giant motions where you're moving from the shoulder unless you have some really far jumps to make on the piano. Another example of using wrist circles in left-hand accompaniment is in Schumann's Aufschwung from his Fantasiestücke, which is translated in English as Soaring. This is Opus 12, number 2. I'm looking at measure 5. We have a bass note, and then we have upper notes in the accompaniment. I'm going to go down on the low note. I'm going to go down and under with my wrist. Come up and over as I play the 2 higher notes. Go down on the low note, up and over, down. You can see the counterclockwise circles in my left hand. Down. Now, if I didn't use wrist circles, it would sound more equal, like this. And it would be harder to get around the instrument, especially for those leaps. And we don't want all of the notes in the left hand to be equal in this instance. We want it to be a strong bass line that we're shaping, but with a gentle upper part of the accompaniment, so the texture doesn't get too thick. All right, so this is what it looks like. Meanwhile, the right hand in this instance is going up and over for that melodic line. As you get comfortable with doing wrist circles and getting comfortable with this motion of down and under and up and over, you're going to start to find a lot of places in your music where you can actually apply them. So I have a few additional thoughts that I want you to keep in mind as you're learning wrist circles and incorporating them into your playing. First of all, make sure that as you do the wrist circle, that your fingers are staying aligned with the keys, that you're not letting the wrist move your hand completely out of position. So in this example that we were just doing in the Robert Schumann, I'm coming down and under, but I'm not coming at a slant. I'm not playing like this. My finger is aligned with the key at the moment when the key goes down. Another thing to keep in mind is as the music gets faster, make smaller motions. In this Chopin example I'm doing small motions with my wrist because but then as the music slows down, move slower, I'm going to use slightly larger motions to connect the notes. When I'm doing the Schumann, there's small motions with the wrist. The faster you play, the more efficient and small your motions need to be. And I want to reiterate the importance of not leading the motion with your elbow. That is the thing that I most often see students start to do when they learn wrist circles for the first time. The elbow is going to be loose. It's going to move, but it is not going to lead the motion. It's just going to move as the arm moves. It's just going to kind of follow that motion. You can see my elbows is almost stationary, but it's moving just in relation to the wrist as the wrist moves. Additionally, it's very important to release the fingers at the bottom of the key. So in the Chopin example, I'm not driving my fingers to the bottom. I'm playing the fingers, and then at the bottom of the key, I am releasing my pressure, and then I'm just letting my arm balance on my fingertip. Another very important thing to keep in mind with wrist circles is that this motion that you're making with the wrist operates independently of the finger number that you are using. The thing that I see most often is that students will let the thumb drag their wrist down when they play it, and you want to avoid that. So, for example, in the Chopin Prelude that I was showing you, we're going to go down with the wrist, but we're coming up by the time we hit the thumb. So a lot of times people will do a great job dropping with the wrist there, but then they will have a hard time coming up on the thumb. So don't let the thumb drag your wrist down. Learn to play the thumb from the hand. I made a video about how to use the thumb. I'll link to a card right up there so you can go hop over and check that out. In that video, I talk about not using the wrist to play the thumb, but playing it from the hand, and particularly from this joint right here in the base of the thumb. Using wrist circles in your playing will help you play more musically and more gesturally, and therefore help you in your overall expressive ability at the piano. I made a video about musical gestures in piano practice, and you can check that out right up there by clicking on that video. If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone else, and also remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel because that helps me reach more people. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and happy practicing!